Go back thousands of years. Dig through the dirt and shift through the sand, and you'll find carvings and paintings depicting gods and men. Religion. It is in the lifeblood of the human race, and has been all along. There's something very human about religion. So much so that we know less about why and how people leave religion than how they come to be religious in the first place. Nevertheless, the question of how people convert to a religious system with doctrines and dogmas and rituals and religious texts has been a task in which social scientists have been engaged almost since the dawn of academic psychology. Let's talk about that here on Switching Sides. Early psychologists, although swimming in the soup of a much more religious culture than modern psychologists, had a rather cynical view of religious belief. Freud, with his developmental stages and obsession with parents, chalked religion off as the search of man for the ultimate father figure. His disciple, Jung, saw religion as a conglomeration of all the archetypes in the collective unconscious. Skinner saw religion as arising accidentally from punishment and reward through verbal behavior. These were all admirable attempts at explaining how religion came to be, but did not explain how a person, who was formerly not part of a religion, became persuaded to join that religion. The earliest attempts at studying and explaining conversion happened in the late 1800s and early 1900s, largely in America. Since this was a time in history when the country was already very Christian, the conversions researchers were studying happened to be of people who were growing up in Christian homes and environments and had a sudden experience which really committed them to their religion, usually of the Jesus spoke to me or I saw an angel sort. Another frequent kind of conversion researchers found involved people who were living deviant lives, drunkards or womanizers or the like, fell on hard times due to their deviance and then encountered some kind of religious message or person which promised some kind of reform or redemption for their lives. As a result, the primary writer and lecturer in the field, William James, came to the conclusion that religious conversions were of two types. The first he called the sick soul type, and the other he called the healthy mind type. Sick souls, said James, were the kind of conversion where a person was convinced that they had some sort of spiritual problem, and that religion would heal them of this problem. James had a dim view of this kind of religion because he thought it fostered the idea that humans needed religion, or else. The healthy mind type of religion, James said, involved the sort of religion in which persons could find enlightenment or mental health. He thought Quakers were a good example of this, and probably would have lumped Zen Buddhists into this category as well. James didn't think that there was a fundamental change in a person's nature when they converted. He just thought that the person sort of refocused their personality on other interests and behaviors. James illustrates religious conversion using the parable of the president taking a camping trip. While in the White House, in his suit and tie, speaking of affairs of the state, the president is very much a politician. However, the same man, clad in flannel and hoisting a backpack and fishing pole, talking of lake and forest would seem a very different person. James would say the outdoorsman was the same person as the politician, but the center of identity shifts to a new focus as the man begins to hike. James wrote his book, A Variety of Religious Experiences, around the turn of the 20th century, and it remained the standard in the field for almost 70 years. Conversion research turned the corner in the late 60s when researchers Laughlin and Stark infiltrated a cult and came up with a modern model of how conversion happened in a more modern culture. I've talked about that cult and Laughlin and Stark's model in another video, which I will link. Laughlin and Stark model has been studied and updated over the years, but its core principles are the same, are still generally accepted by conversion researchers. One thing that conversion researchers had to do away with was this idea of a so-called crisis conversion. The idea behind a crisis conversion is that the person has a moment of spiritual inspiration and suddenly becomes converted in that exact moment. This was the model that William James would have operated under, given that all of his conversion stories involve things like sudden visions of God or altar calls within churches or the like. Now, researchers believe conversion to be a process and be socially motivated, meaning that the convert integrates into a religious community as part of their conversion. In James's case, the converts were frequently already part of the community. The modern conversion model runs something like this. First, the person has some kind of problem, stress, or ongoing dissatisfaction in his or her life. Maybe it's a sudden difficulty, or maybe it's a problem that has been going on for a while, but eventually they start looking for a way to resolve the difficulty. As they look for resolutions, the idea of religion becomes an option on the table. Now, to put this in perspective, a very religious country like Brazil, the idea of religion being a potential solution to a life problem isn't that unusual. Churches aren't an unusual sight on the street corner. There isn't a large cultural stigma against religion. And other people you know will probably have found resolutions to their problems in religion. In highly secular cultures, like Europe and Canada, religion isn't going to be the first option on the table. Likely, you will seek something more culturally acceptable, such as therapy or medication. But if a person is desperate enough, the next step is an encounter with a religious individual or group. Encountering this person is going to happen during a time when your resistance to experimenting with new ideas is down. If the experience is positive, it will lead the person to participating in various events. As the person participates, they're accepted and integrated into the community. During this time, if the religious ideas start to click, the person makes a public commitment, and at that point, they're converted. Researchers argue about when you can call a person fully converted, but it's generally agreed that a person is converted when they can tell a complete story about their conversion experience, usually called a testimony in religious circles. Religious conversion research has gone in a number of different directions, exploring things like converting between religions, migrating between denominations within a religion, religious conversion and feminism, immigrants and religious conversion, forced religious conversion, and how religious conversion works differently in specific religions like Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, and so forth. The most current field of religious conversion research involves committed atheists who become religious, and the leading researcher in that field is my friend Jana Harmon. I'll put a link in the description on how you can check out her work. So that's a summary on the history and standing of religious conversion. I may visit specific areas of this research in future videos. For now, this has been Switching Sides.